Hello and welcome to 2025. I'm filming this on New Year's Day. I am in 2025. Hopefully I'm posting this same day because I want it to be really short, or in the immediate future. So it's early 2025. We're fresh. We're in the beginnings. Today I just want to kind of go over my favorite books of the year. I thought about doing a best and worst video, or mashing them together, or putting them in sort of order from like least favorite to most, but that's not kind of the energy I woke up with this morning. I just wanted to talk about the favorite books I read in 2024, and I didn't want to rank them because I loved all of them. I had so much fun reading them, and I wanted to focus more on their merits than where they stood in comparison to each other, because a lot of them are so different and equally wonderful. I'm going to go over my top 10, have some honorable mentions, and then we're just gonna wrap this video up and drink some chai and relax for the rest of the day. The first book I want to talk about is actually the last book I read in 2024, like the dead end. And this is why I didn't do this video earlier, is because I started a couple really good books. This was one of them, and the idea of not putting this book on the list was really messing with me. That is Ava Reid's Lady Macbeth. This is a book I got on Libby in September, and I was really enjoying it. I was completely awed by this book. However, I was in the middle of publishing my own book, and so it kind of took a back burner. And then when I was on vacation, I was in the last hours of reading it, and I couldn't finish it in time. I even put it on airplane mode, but Libby snapped it back, and it had a very long wait list. I got it last week. I binge read the ending of it, and it was so good. Ava Reid is a phenomenal writer. She really caught my attention this year. Although I've loved her books in the past, something about her writing in these past few books have really clicked for me as being favorites, and Lady Macbeth is, I think, by far one of her best, and possibly one of her most controversial. It's a very classic feeling book, and it feels like it has old bones, but with a new, fresh story. It is not a play-by-play story of Macbeth. It really is more of an interpretation and inspiration of Macbeth, following Lady Macbeth and her journey and what she has to do in order to survive. Felt like it had this feral undertone that Ava Reid does just right. Like, she pinpricks something in me. It's like an acupuncture moment where like I get shivers all through my body when I'm reading some of her lines. She just seems to hit something, like a feral feminine rage in me. I end up coming away from it not angry, but in catharsis. If you are a fan of Macbeth or Shakespearean plays at all, I think you can appreciate this one while not trying to compare it to its original text. If you want adaptations of Macbeth, they're everywhere. This is inspired by and a really unique take on it, and I just loved it. It was epic. From beginning to end, epic. I also really enjoyed the romantic pining moments, but they didn't overtake the story. This story was very much about Lady Macbeth. So that's the first book I'm gonna mention, and it's just because it's been in my head rent-free since September. On the topic of feminine rage, which seems to be a little bit more of a theme for me this year, I noticed, I have Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. This is a phenomenal book that reads as if it is a nonfiction, though I will say going into it, the characters that it's following is a fiction, but all of the facts and information gathered by Jessica Knoll is factual. This is about a real-life serial killer in the 1970s during the boom of serial killers. This follows an infamous one, though he's never mentioned by name, and it is done so artfully. She tears apart this pathetic man in the most strategic way possible. She peels him back and proves to the world what an absolute loser moron he is, while also feeling anguish and injustice for how the justice system dealt with this case and how bad they bumbled it. The facts and information are there. I think that it encourages you to go and look and research some of these things while also not romanticizing what a serial killer is. It takes a different twist on true crime that I really appreciated. This one was a standout to me. I started it and finished it on the plane ride home from my vacation, and I did not stop. I think they provided me food, but I did not sleep. I just listened to the book straight, and it was phenomenal. Hopping back into an Ava Reid book, I'm just gonna go ahead and toss in A Study in Drowning by Ava Reid. I gave this one a 4, but it was one of those books that I thought I was going to give a 3 for the first half, and then something just clicks. I started to understand what she was doing. And I think Ava Reid just does a really good balance of character and theme and setting. And she writes everything so beautifully and atmospherically that you are just drawn in by one of those things, and then the rest catches up and ensnares you. I ended up really smitten by the romance in it as well. I don't know how she makes me so angry, but also like kind of giddy. I don't know how she does it. I think Ava Reid might be a new favorite author of mine because I just can't stop admiring her and what she's able to do. A Study in Drowning is about a woman architect who wanted to be a writer, but women are not allowed to create art or literature in this world. They have certain fields they're allowed to go into, and architecture is the closest she could get in order to get into this university. And then through her university program, she's taken up for a job or internship where she gets to reestablish the house of her favorite author, who has just passed away. She's working alongside someone who's doing a study on the author in the program she would have gone into if she had been able to be a writer. The two are working together and find out some more ominous tones about this house, about the author themselves, and start to unravel some truths and the theme of the story. I had already thought it was gorgeously written, and I was really intrigued by the main character. I hadn't felt that connective bit, and then it just clicked. I found myself loving her. I found myself enjoying her. I just really appreciated this book, and while I gave it a 4, it's a very strong 4, and it's still a favorite. My star rating is kind of nebulous. I don't really talk about it very often because it's just to give you a gauge or an idea of where I stand with a book as far as helping people try and find it. I can also see me in a different universe giving this a 5, and truly it's a heart book for me. Like, I really love it, and I found out that the sequel is coming out. I had no idea this book was getting a sequel, but everything I've seen about it so far makes me very excited to read it, and so I've already pre-ordered it. This is the Illumicrate special edition of it, which I really love. I also love the original cover so much that I kind of want that one as well. This is one of those books where I'm starting to think I could get multiples of Ava Reid, and I just don't have the funding for that. I need that thought experiment to die. I'm already so lucky with this one. It's gorgeous. I'm so impressed by this book and how it was able to grasp my attention even though I wasn't connected to the character right away, because character is so important to me, and these characters did end up being important to me, but she really brings something else into my reading experience that I don't usually experience before I set the book down, which I am doing now, but that's only because I'm done talking about it. Next, I want to talk about The Last Phi Hunter, or Phi Hunter. I'm still a little iffy on that. This is a Thai-inspired novel following our main character, X. He is a Phi Hunter, or some sort of draconic demon slayer, and he is trying to slay this like ultra mega demon. So he slays like minor demons, but he's trying to find like the big bad. And he comes across a woman who is pregnant and trying to get from point A to point B, and escorts her along the way through a very treacherous haunted forest. I ate it up. I could not stop reading it. I think I finished it at something like 4 a.m. I'm a baby. I'm in bed by 8:30, asleep by 9. This was an unusual circumstance for me. I couldn't stop reading it. It was so intoxicating, and X is such a funny, great main character. I loved how genuine and kind of like fumbling he was. Like, he was a little bit clumsy. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't badass. He was just trying his absolute best, and it got him really far. There are some really great connections outside of the romance in this one, but the romance really shined for me. I was drawn in. I was all for it. I was shipping. I was excited. I loved the different descriptions. It was also funny. I read this for Draconathon, and it is a draconic creature. I mean, if you look at the picture, it's very draconic, but these are more demonic draconic, but they are within the draconic category. You can totally count that. We are as lax as it comes if you ever join Draconathon. What does have fantastic classic dragons though is To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Monoquill Blackgoose. Oh my god, this book has my whole heart. It made me feel so warm and comforted, and I felt like it was so sweet. This follows our main character Anarchus, and she is growing up in an indigenous village, but part of a colonized fantasy world that I believe is derived from North America, inspired by North American culture. There is a lot of North American indigenous folklore in this, including the dragons themselves, the Nempeshaway, and there was just so much rich vibrance in this book, as well as a love for character connections. I really enjoyed the friendships and the polyamorous romantic tension that was kind of like simmering in this young adult explorative novel. I can tell that these characters are going to get older and they're going to grow into themselves more. I'm so excited to see where this ends up, but there's definitely a lot of coming of age exploration and conversations, some being incredibly challenging and difficult because Anarchus is a character who ends up finding a dragon that is indigenous to her culture and having to take herself and that dragon to an academy in order to register the dragon and pretty much train it up within a colonizer dragon academy, and all of the things that she has to unpack with that. I thought that the conversations were spot on. I thought that it did a really good job of balancing being prideful of your culture. One of the things I really appreciated is that they did have a lot of different perspectives on this. It wasn't just a mass villainization of this dragon academy, and it wasn't romanticizing it either. One of Anarchus's brothers, who moved to this colonized city in order to make inventions, to use some of the materials that they didn't have in her village. While Anarchus herself is very proud of her culture, they are blending those things together while also talking about important topics. It was just such a massive win for me, and I'm so glad I picked it up. I actually had the physical copy, but I had some friends come into town, and there was like just a connective moment where I realized this book would be better with one of my friends, so I actually gave it to them as a gift. I don't have it physically anymore. I feel like it was just the right move. It felt correct in moving that story forward, and I will end up having to buy another copy because I just can't live without that book, and I'm definitely going to be rereading it before the next one comes out. Let's talk about Nona. I know that I've talked about getting the ninth a lot, and that's because this is the third in the Locked Tomb trilogy, so this follows characters where it's just massive spoilers. What I'll say is Nona as a character is such a sweet and pure being. I loved her before I understood her. This is an undeniably lovable character, and once you realize what you love about Nona, it really all just wraps up at the end. I was openly sobbing when I really put together what I was reading, and everything just came and knitted all together. I did not put this on my 5-star prediction list because I didn't think anything could measure up to Harrow and Gideon. Harrow did kind of beat out Gideon to me. Gideon feels like a classic now where I reread Gideon and I'm like, hell yeah, look at these bones that we're building a story out of. And then we got to Harrow and completely dismantled everything, just rewired my entire brain. This gaslit me through the entirety of the story, and I was in love with it. Like, I've never enjoyed being gaslit so much in my life, and I've been gaslit a lot. Finally, Nona, I was like, after these, I can't. It's not possible. Once you reach 100%, that's it. You tap out. There's something that's lost in the magic of it, and I didn't lose the magic of it. She just did something different with it, and the epilogue in this is one of the most epic things I've ever read. I don't know what we're getting with Alecto because we don't even have a cover or a release date, but whatever we're getting, I know I'm going to love it, and it's going to be something like I've never experienced before, because that's how I felt about Nona. In the reread of it, I couldn't get through a single page without feeling like this tender ache throughout it. It was a really good book. I'm also going to talk about Project Hail Mary. This is by Andy Weir. This is like a pretty hard science sci-fi novel that I wasn't expecting to love as much as I did. I read The Martian and I was like, this is a one-shot wonder that I'm going to treasure and love forever, and that's true. Andy Weir actually upped his game in Project Hail Mary, and I just don't know how they do it. Like, I don't know how authors do this where I'm like, that's it, you capped out. And then they put something else out, and like, this had a friendship and connection action in it that I never expected, and such a fabulous ending that just subverted a lot of expectations. This book subverts a lot of expectations while also following a lot of typical storylines that I kind of saw coming, but it's just enough to keep me grounded in a very hard science book. Andy Weir makes me believe that I could work for NASA, and I can't tell you how untrue that is. Talk about bolstering confidence. Like, I feel smart when I read these because it's so easy to understand what's being said, and the way that Andy Weir plays with hard science words and facts and throws in an F-bomb or casual language to kind of dumb down the science after explaining a really large concept, you just get it. Andy Weir can make you feel like you understand science, and then you don't have to worry about whether you actually do or not because you're not going to apply for NASA. Unless you are, in which case, like, good for you. That's amazing. I hope it's not defunded. Piranesi was such an amazing book. I have a vlog of it. I'll link it down below. I have these in various different vlogs and I'll try and like condense them, but I am also really bad at that. So if you go down into my links and you don't find much, that's par for the course. Don't be surprised. But Piranesi was one of those books where I just adored the main character. I immediately felt this protective urge to just cover Piranesi from any truths that he was going to find about the world. I didn't want him to have none of it. I didn't want anything to touch Piranesi. I wanted him to just live in his blissful world forever. And it was just such a fun comfort read that took me like on a journey. I don't want to explain what Piranesi is because it gives too much away. Just know that Piranesi is the story of a character called Piranesi who lives in a world that is somewhat familiar but completely strange from your own, and he knows exactly how his world works. There's lots of stairs, there's lots of doors, there's a lot of ocean, and he's going to teach us about it. And that's all I'm gonna say. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a 5-star classic. Like, this book is going to be classic literature, and if it's not, that's because the world ended. A thriller book made it onto my best books of 2024 list, and I did not expect that walking into 2024. I don't dislike thrillers, I just don't really pick them up and read them. Like, they're not my go-to. I'm reading like fantasy books, I'm reading frilly things. I wasn't expecting a hardcore thriller to get here, but Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister really blew me away. I was hooked. From the first chapter, the first thing happening, I was in, and I was like, there's no way that this is gonna be good. I don't know how she's gonna pull this off. And I got really connected to the characters. I loved the main character. I loved her connection with her husband. The premise of this book is that a woman is looking outside, waiting for her son to get home, and she witnesses her son murder someone. And she is flung back into the next day, and it slowly has her go back in time until she solves the murder, or not the whodunit, but the whydunit. It really like explores the feeling that a mother would have afterwards of being like, where did I go wrong? And her trying to grapple with this, and also watching her son grow up and seeing him as a small child and a baby, and then having in the back of her mind that he might very well be a killer and not understanding what happened. This is just, it was so phenomenal, and it pulled at all of my heartstrings, and the twist made sense. Nothing about this felt cheap. I just thank it so much for that, and now I'm forever chasing that high, and I have not hit it again. Sorry if the lighting or camera angle changed at all. My SD card ran out of storage, so I had to resolve some issues. Back to my list. A thriller that came close was kind of like a murder mystery, and I'm finding I need a little bit of surrealism in my thriller suspense books, and I thought that this one was just really fun. This is My Murder by Katie Williams, and I can see why a lot of people wouldn't rate this one as highly as I did, but I really enjoyed this premise, and I really appreciated how a lot of it was written. My Murder follows a character who has been murdered and her trying to solve her own murder with a sci-fi aspect to it. So it's not as much fantasy and surrealism as it has like a sci-fi twist, but I don't want to get into any spoiler territory, so I'll just leave it at that. You understand the rules of this world, and Katie Williams plays within it. But she also really nailed the feeling of disassociation, which I don't see done or done well very much in books in general, but like the feeling of actually disassociating, which I have experienced, is not something I have seen concretely done in books, and she nailed it. I also thought she had some very amazing prose for like what she was doing, did the above and beyond of a thriller for me, or like a murder mystery. I don't know what category I would put this in. Suspense. It was suspenseful while just keeping me gripped the entire time. Fantastic prose, ripping premise, and incredibly well nuanced disassociation and PTSD and trauma. The only thing that didn't hit for me personally was the ending, but I didn't think it was a bad ending. I saw and understood people taking off about a star for the ending. While it wasn't what I necessarily wanted for the end, I understood it and I understood the author's intention, and I don't think I would want to change it. It's not what I personally had in my mind. It's not where I would have gone with it. I respect and appreciate where she did, because I think that she accomplished what she set out to do. It made for a more enjoyable book to me because of that, because she stayed true to what she wanted to do the entire time. I still had an absolute blast while also being highly tense the entire time, because it is, you know, it's a suspense. A book I picked up based off of a review and rating from Olivia Savannah from Olivia's Catastrophe was What White People Can Do Next by Emma Dobry. This is most specifically is a book for turning allyship into coalition, and there's a really strong focus on that I think I will be able to apply moving forward, and I'm just really appreciative of this book and how it got its message across. I feel like there are many books out there that should be a required reading in order to navigate our world and climate, but I think that this one just does something a little bit different. And I also feel that Emma is coming from a more holistic background, not just a United States like centralist perspective on race and diversity, but from a just more international perspective, which I think is incredibly useful. And I remember not thinking it was as relevant to me when I lived in the United States, because there is a bubble around that place, and it's so thick that it's really, it's almost like a otherworldly epiphany when you leave it. And I had no idea until I moved abroad, and I have appreciated more international perspectives since moving so much, because I really do understand a lot of what I was hearing and not fully like seeping in. It was saturating the bubble, but it wasn't penetrating the way it has. And this book does a really great job of just navigating a really fraught landscape flawlessly. It is a very useful and very powerful book. It's also incredibly short. As an audiobook, I think it was like 4 hours. I want a physical copy so that I can like tab it up, because from the forward on, I was wanting to highlight things. I just could not get enough of the statements being made and how impactful they were. And it really helped me understand what kind of language I want to be using moving forward in order to actually be contributing to a conversation versus just trying to follow a storyline of what's happening and be a good ally. Very appreciative of this book. One of the best books I read this year, and if you are just on the fence about picking up this book, you don't know if it's for you, you don't know if you need it, go ahead and just read her forward. Read her forward and decide from there if this book is for you. If you think it's not for you, it probably is though. So I'm just gonna leave that there. I haven't trapped you. You should probably read the book. Olivia always has fantastic recommendations. I highly recommend her channel. I will link her down below. Some of my best recommendations have come from her, and our reading taste is really aligned. Some of our top tier favorites are an exact diagram of each other. If you think we have similar taste, probably got similar taste to Olivia Savannah, and that's good taste. I also have some honorable mentions I'd like to cover really quick, because these are books that I really enjoyed and I kind of read them one after another, had an impact on me. I don't necessarily know if they'll have a lasting impact on me. The first I will bring up is An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson. I really admire S.T. Gibson's writing. I think she writes absolutely gorgeously. It is opulent writing. It's lush, it's sexual and potent. I don't know words quite to describe it, but if you've read S.T. Gibson, you know what I mean. I really enjoyed An Education in Malice. It's a vampire book. From what I understand, it's a Carmilla retelling, but I haven't read the original story of Carmilla. It's definitely going to be something I explore this year, probably more towards the autumn era of my 2025. Also incredibly sapphic, so sapphic, sexy vampires. The only thing that didn't appeal to me as much was beyond the sexual connection. I felt that we were missing some of the interpersonal connection between the two characters, but the sexual connection and chemistry was through the roof. I don't know where I stand on this book, but to not mention it would feel like a crime. This is House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. I have an entire vlog where I read this book. It's somehow not a spoiler vlog despite me talking about it the entire time, with almost unfiltered, unfettered unfettered reactions. So I'll link that down below. This was a trip. The only reason why it's not on my favorites is because no, damn you for even thinking you could be one of my favorite books. I'm so angry that this exists and I'm incredibly impressed. I'm not even gonna really explain what House of Leaves is. It's a mind trip. Very immersive. I guess you could call it a haunted house story, but really go ahead and check out that vlog. I do my best to describe it and you really will get exactly as much as I have to offer out of that. The next book that I'd love to mention is The Phoenix Keeper by S.A. McLean, and this was just a really straight up cozy fantasy. It follows a zookeeper who tends to a phoenix in like a magical zoo, and I really thought that it was just like a warm and fuzzy book, and I would love more books set in this world. I don't necessarily think I need to follow this same main character, but I love the world that was created. This author definitely has a way of making things feel cozy and comfortable. In this world, we could just do so much, so it's definitely an honorable mention for that fact. My next honorable mention is The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is a fantastically well-written book. Leigh Bardugo is a phenomenal writer. At first, thought that I was getting kind of more of the same of Leigh Bardugo, but she really does pick up the pace and it just becomes its own thing. It really is just supremely good writing. I think that that's what I enjoyed about it most. There were character moments I really enjoyed. Overall, it just didn't give me the sparkle. I don't know how else to describe it besides like the favorite sparkle. It was a 4 for me in a very solid and secure way where I went, this is good writing, this was good reading, I enjoyed this. I didn't have very many updates and reactions when I was trying to vlog for it. Like I just read it and I didn't have anything really to say. It just didn't translate into me having a lot of verbal conversations about it. I can see a lot of people putting this on their favorites and I have to give it its due. It's a fantastic book and it deserves to be at least within this video. The last book I'd like to talk about in my honorable mentions is a book that I couldn't in good conscience put in my top 10 favorites, but it'll always have a place in my heart because I wrote it, and it's The Solstice Court by Jade Juniper, which is me. I'm Jade Juniper. I started writing this book in 2020 and I finished it this year. I read it for hopefully the last time for quite some time, editing it and revising it and taking in beta and alpha reader feedback, and it was just such an enriching experience. I think that in writing my second book, I'm finding out more about my writing style and I'm really getting to hone in on some of the things I discovered in book 1. But book 1 has to be mentioned here because I did write a book this year and that's pretty fucking cool. This is a book about a girl named Kezra. She's a princess, but she's also the soul heir. That's soul, S-O-U-L, not a spelling error, a soul heir. That means that her soul is actually very old. It reincarnates. She is the reincarnation of her kingdom's founding king. She has a lot of expectations placed upon her. Most recently, a war on either side of her kingdom is taking place and she is expected to hold a place of neutrality in order to keep the peace in her own kingdom. When both neighboring kingdom's heirs come to court, she's faced with the opportunity to really come into her own, but is barricaded by the idea that she also needs to hold a place of neutrality, and she has to also figure out what neutrality is and if that actually is her stance at all. This is most likely, hopefully, by all of the gods available to me, please let it be a trilogy, not a series, and I'm working on book 2 now, but book 1 I wrote and I read several times. I really enjoyed it, actually, and I would recommend it if you like cozy political fantasies tackling really large subjects in a safe and comfortable atmosphere. That's The Solstice Court. If you'd like it in hardcover, you can get it at almost any bookstore or retailer. You just have to order or ask them for it and they can get it delivered there, as well as of course online stores and Amazon. For the paperback, it's the exact same deal, but you can also of course always get them at libraries. Libraries are my main focus. If you want to read my book for free, the library is the place to do it. This also goes for ebook copies. You can get my ebook almost anywhere. This is the list of all the different places you can get my ebook. It's widespread. We're not just talking KU, we're talking anywhere and everywhere at any point in time. But you can also request the ebook at libraries, and I do get residual royalties every time it's checked out, so it's a huge help to me. Kobo Plus is another place you can get it. Kobo Plus is not exclusive, so don't worry. If you don't have Kobo Plus, you can still find my book. It's just if you already have a Kobo Plus subscription, you've already paid for it. Again, the links will be down below. below. It helps me as a debut indie author so much. If you read it, you recommend it, or add it to your Goodreads, any sort of interaction with my book is a huge help to me. I appreciate it, so that's that. Yay, I wrote a book, and it's definitely an honorable mention because I honorably wrote it. That's all the books I have for you. I would love to know what really gave you the tingly, sparkly feelings that made you want to celebrate reading. What hit just right? Give me all of the good vibes. If you don't have that kind of energy to give, good vibes can also be found in sparkles, so go ahead and throw me a few sparkly star emojis. I really appreciate it. But whether you do or not, happy 2025, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!